This is Ryan and Michelle, and welcome to the Celebrate MarriageCast, where we hope to restore and reclaim godly marriages through honest and real conversations.
Welcome to episode 43. Welcome to you, our listener. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for working on your relationship, for making this investment of time into your relationship, your marriage. And we just want to say thank you. Thank you for listening, and you're so valuable to us. We want to hear from you. We want to know the impact being made. So, Ryan, we have a few asks to make of our listeners today.
Okay.
We would love for you to do all the things, you guys. Subscribe. You know it. Subscribe. Like the episodes. If they're making an impact, just click that button. Like it. Leave a review or a comment, depending on what platform you're listening on, watching on. We have the Celebrate MarriageCast on Spotify, so you can watch and listen. We have it on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. We're on YouTube, all of those platforms. And Ryan, I would say, I feel like we're a freight train that's really chugging along here.
Getting some steam.
We're getting a lot of steam.
Yeah.
We shared last week, we're over 40,000 subscribers on YouTube with the Celebrate MarriageCast, and we have so many listens and watches every week, and it's just really cool to hear and see what God's doing, because the vision of our church, Celebrate Community Church, is for people to meet Jesus and then be Jesus in the community. And the first place you can really start with that is within your own walls of your home, being like Jesus, living out the fruits of the Spirit, acting like He would around your family, to your spouse, your kids, and then out in the community. And as Ryan said, we want to help you to restore and reclaim your marriage, your godly relationship. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your help spreading the word. That's so valuable to us. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
And today we are going to visit the topic that we started last week. After the 4th of July, we thought it was appropriate to kind of do a little fire theme. We talked about getting burned. Playing with fire, you're going to get burned.
Going to get burned, right.
But we didn't want to leave you hanging there.
Yeah. So, as Michelle said, last week we introduced this concept of playing with fire. Mm-hmm. And if you play with fire long enough, you're going to get burned. We discussed two big things that we see in regards to those things that are out there that, we painted this picture of that playing with fire. We talked about, the company you keep, specifically regarding your relationships, the company you keep. And then we also jumped into the topic of social media. Mm-hmm.
Or texting communications, who you're communicating with through any platform. Yeah.
So the company you keep and the communication that you have.
Yeah.
And we talked about those, and where we wanted to, this is really part two of that. We painted that picture of those fires. Now we want to kind of help you to navigate, something that we've referred to in our relationship as guardrails. If you've ever been on a road, and
I'm sure they've been on a road.
Yeah, maybe.
Like a windy road, right? Imagine this. You're driving at the top of a cliff.
Yeah.
Right? Zooming around the little zips and turns, the hairpin turns.
Yeah.
That's where you're at right now.
Yeah, right.
Steep cliff.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You
with
notice
a steep overlook.
With a steep, drop off. You notice on the side of the road that there's something there. They're called guardrails. And Michelle, what do they help you to do?
Well, worst case scenario, you bump into it, they're gonna help protect you. So you're not flying over the edge.
Absolutely.
And, sometimes you're driving along those and you see they're kind of dinged and dented, and you just think, wow, like, thank goodness they were there.
Yeah. Yeah.
To stop, whether the driver fell asleep or was distracted, swerved, whatever it was.
Yeah.
They kind of lost their way.
Right.
Guardrail was in place and helped them to remain safe and not from going over the edge, literally to destruction.
Yeah. And I think this is such a great analogy for relationships, right? You're going to have those moments in your relationships where things are going to happen, right? And it's so important to have a guardrail in place to keep you from going over that edge.
Yeah. Ryan, I think last week we did kind of paint the picture of, worst case scenario, the danger and the importance of what can happen if you start playing with fire. And we just talked about the likelihood of the more you play with it, the more likely you are to get burned,
Right.
as Ryan said. But we want to help you establish these boundaries, these guardrails. And we had promised the listeners, or kind of teased them, I guess, that maybe we would share a little bit of our own journey of how we started implementing these boundaries and these guardrails. And it started really early on.
Yeah.
And I think, should we share it?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
So I remember the conversation. I was over, I think we were watching a movie over at your house, Ryan. And I just asked a question. I was like, what do you, I really just went for it. I was like, Ryan, what do you think the Bible says about sex before marriage? And I think you were really, I don't know what the word is, caught off guard.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure.
So we were downstairs and we were at your house, we were watching a movie, and we just kind of were talking. And I remember asking you this question. It was really bold. It had been on my mind. And I just was really curious because we'd been dating for a little while, and I just was curious. So I had asked you, I think I turned to you and I looked, and I think maybe my Bible was down there too. I don't know. Maybe we were just chatting. I don't know what, but I had asked you, I said, hey, Ryan, what do you think the Bible says about dating and sex before marriage? And I think you were, what was the word? Shocked.
Yeah, I was super caught off guard because I think it was kind of out of the blue a little bit.
Oh, it was super out of the blue.
Yeah. Yeah. And I honestly was scared.
Sure.
Because I wasn't sure what you were asking.
Right. And like what I was wanting to prove, like
right.
one way or the other.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Certainly we had like feelings for each other, and it probably felt like a lot was hanging in the balance there. Like, where are we going with this? And then I think I'd shared with you that, I really want to do this God's way. We've, done things our own way before, and I have, and it failed miserably. And I want to do this relationship God's way. I want to honor God with this. And I just want you to know that. And I said that from the very beginning, like, hey, I was on this journey of seeking God and just learning and growing in Him and coming to church and just really finding my identity in Him. And that's why I told you from the first date we were on, hey, what's your relationship with Jesus? Where are you going to church? Because I've done this my way. It doesn't work. God needs to be at the center of this relationship. So that was a conversation I was trying to continue with you. And I feel like we had such a rich discussion after that. And from that moment, we really set this guardrail. Mm-hmm. That was the day that we began constructing this guardrail of how we would date and how we would carry on in our relationship as we prepared to marry.
Yeah.
And that guardrail stood strong.
Yeah.
And it was there. And I'm really thankful that we had that conversation. So what I want to encourage our listeners with is, I think if you're just leaving things up to seeing where they're going to go, it's not going to go in a direction that you probably want.
Right.
Or it's going to go past that. You're going to blow past that edge. If you want to be intentional in your dating relationship, in your marriage, you have to be intentional with your guardrails. You have to know where you're going. And this can apply more than physical to anything, how you want to show up for your family, how you want to spend your time. This can apply to so many areas. But if you don't establish where you're going and what you will and won't allow, it's really easy to blow past that.
Yeah.
So that's what we want to talk about. We want to give you some tools for how we set up our guardrails, some areas.
Yeah. Michelle, I'm gonna just before we get started, I'm gonna add on to that because I think and I'm gonna say something that I think is is maybe difficult to hear, especially for those that are maybe dating. But I will say this: when we had that conversation about, when we're looking at what does the Bible say about premarital sex, and we made that decision of, okay, we're going to wait until we are married. I can tell you that it really changed our relationship, and it changed the foundation because we could really get to know each other because we had set that guardrail of saying, okay, we're not going to do this. This is the guardrail. And there were things that we did to keep ourselves away from that guardrail as well.
Like one of them was, and our life group called us out on that. I would just spend the night over at Ryan's house, and we weren't, like having sex, but before this conversation, it'd be late, we'd watch a movie, I'd just crash on the couch or stay over,
Right.
And our life group was like, but think about the perception. I mean, what do the neighbors probably think that you guys are doing? Your car is there overnight, and also you are playing with fire.
That's fire.
You are playing with fire. If you were staying at his house, it's a matter of time before this.
Yeah.
So they really called us out on that, and they were like, no more slumber parties.
Yeah.
So we changed that after that conversation.
Yeah. But I will tell you that I think set a foundation for us that I think is so important because, again, we got to connect differently. And physical connection is important, but I think when you're beginning a relationship, to take that off the table was so, I think it's so important.
Yeah, we really got to know each other in such a deep, intimate way, intellectually, and in all these other areas that we probably wouldn't have had otherwise.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, such a good word. Ryan, I really thought for this, giving our listeners some tools, that it's almost like you have these different areas. And I'm going to tie this into putting on the armor of God. We're going to read that scripture later on here, but and these ones aren't from that, but thinking of different areas of your body that you can kind of put guardrails in front of. So the first one I wanted to start with, it was feet. Your feet are what carry you and bring you. Your feet are really your action. Where are you walking? Where are you going? So we're going to talk about feet, eyes, and ears, and kind of things that go with each of those areas. So for feet, where are you going? What situations are you physically putting yourself in? So when I was in ministry, this is where some of these boundaries and guardrails really were modeled so well for me. And I've just chose to continue. We're still in ministry, right? Even though I'm working in, the world now, that is my ministry. This is our ministry. Everything's ministry. But when I was on staff with the church, these are really modeled so well. So this is where I learned it, and then I've continued it. But we talked last week about being aware of meetings with the opposite sex, not saying that you can't, just be aware. And there are a lot of creative ways to make that meeting not just a one-on-one. So I was in a networking group where we had to do these one-on-ones with every member. And I remember my friend Sarah and I had joined at the same time. So when I would meet with some of the guys, we both had to do our one-on-ones. So I would just say like, hey, so-and-so, can Sarah and I meet with you at this coffee shop? And they were like, yeah, 2 birds with 1 stone, and it was great. And then we all just kind of shared. It worked. A lot of the committees I'm on now, I meet with people, they're committee co-chairs. So it's very easy to have, a couple of people meet. It's not always going to work, but I would say 99% of the time, I'm able to make that work. And then just being really aware of where are you meeting? What are you doing? And I also, because I feel like I had pushback on this once when somebody was like, I'm not going to do anything. It's like they were maybe a little insulted, like I was implying that, they were going to make a move on me or something. It's not that at all, you guys. It's just really, if the guardrail is always there, then you never have to be in a situation where your guard is down, if that makes sense, right? It's just like a best practice to always do. Because when you're living above reproach and you're living that way, then that's just what you do, is who you are. And you're never going to get in a situation where things are compromised.
Right.
So I hope that's helpful. And it's not to be, over the top or, oh my gosh, but that's just been a really helpful area. And it feels, you've said this before, Ryan, just that it feels honoring. So I do that with meetings and also car travel. So if I were to go to a meeting somewhere, I drive myself, or, I wouldn't go on like a long car trip one-on-one with a board member of mine that was a male. So
yeah. I think, Michelle, a perfect example of this is something, of you living this out and just kind of seeing this in action, just like 2 weeks ago. In 2025, you have a conference that you are going to. And typically it's you and the board president. Mm-hmm. And, the board president is a male. And so it is, halfway across the country in Pittsburgh, and you did something that I thought was extremely honoring, and it wasn't weird in any way, is that you sent an email to the board president, you CC'd me in on it, and just saying, hey, like, this would be a great opportunity for, my spouse to come along, for your spouse to come along. And, like, the hotel rooms are already paid for, 2 separate hotel rooms are already paid for. It just would be a flight. And, I read it and I was just like, wow, like, this is so honoring to me, but also to his spouse. And it's nothing, again, it's not anything of like, you think something's going to happen. It's just simply, why put yourself in a situation when there is a creative way to put this out there and to honor your spouse.
Yeah.
And I was reading it and was just like, wow, like, I mean, not only is it honoring to me, it's honoring to her, this board member spouse as well. And I can just see it, oh yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah. And really it's true. I mean, in this situation, we will be booking 2 separate rooms. So there's no added expense if the spouse has come, and just to say, hey, what if, we're not going to pay for your ticket with, my company funds, that will be separate, but it's, kind of a fun little getaway then too, that we're going to have it was a creative solution. And I feel like everyone's really pleased with it and excited about it. And his spouse is, I think, excited. He wrote back to that email and said, hey, I talked to my spouse about it and this is going to work great. And so.
And it's a year out. So obviously any expenses that are there gives time to save and to have those. And I think it's just a great little vacation.
Yeah. And I think just something we can all look forward to. And I wanted to have that conversation quickly just so there's no, stress about it in the meantime. Yeah. So thanks, Ryan. Thanks for sharing that.
So Michelle, the second thing that you pointed out is our eyes. Mm-hmm. And I think our eyes are so important because obviously it's what we see. It's what, we have to take an inventory of what we're watching, whether that's social, TV, movies, the things that we're observing.
Ryan, can I just add in a scripture there that ties in with that? Yeah. So this is, let me get here really quick. So Matthew 6:22 says, the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are good, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? So again, the eye is the lamp of the body.
Yeah. And I think it's so important, to have those guardrails in place for what you're bringing in. What your eyes are seeing. If there's people, we talked about social media, if there's people that are essentially corrupting your eyes in some way or another, you've got to put guardrails in place to help you with that.
Yeah, I think, we shared a little bit about that last week. And I think males and females, there have been females that I've just had to hit the snooze on,
Right.
or, just because, some of my history is just my identity in Christ. And I've shared about eating disorder before and stuff like that. But sometimes there are these little triggers where it's just like, Satan, I'm not going to allow you to like put this in my feed and to like tempt me and just to pollute my thoughts. I don't like where this is going. I'm just going to take a little break from this person, or maybe it's just unfollowing. If there's someone in your content feed that is putting little thoughts in your head or in your eyes that are going into your head and your heart, it's not worth it. Like, don't let that pollution come in. You can control that. You can control, I guess you can't always control if someone, walks by on the street or something, but with your feeds, you can control that. I know there's a lot of negativity out there, and we talk about that. There's a lot of negative stuff out there. You can control that. You can control what sites you're going to, what feeds you're scrolling through, what comments you're reading. If that stuff's bringing you down, get out of that. Get out of those weeds.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's something, Michelle, that's such a great point. I think of reading comments.
Oh my gosh.
That was something for me. Like I was reading this article, and then like I started reading comments, and then all of a sudden, like I feel my blood pressure raising, and I'm like getting angry, and I'm just like, wow, okay. Like,
yeah. I had that happen the other day too.
I need to stop this.
There was an article that I gave a thumbs up to, and I thought it was like, oh, this is a really great thing that, these people are doing. And then I started scrolling and reading all the trolling comments, and I was like, oh my gosh, people are so mean and cruel. Pause, time out. Don't be a troll, you guys. It's not worth it. Like, why do people have to bring other people down like that? Yeah. Like, even for great posts, there's always these naysayers. Why do people don't? Listeners of the Celebrate Marriage Cast, please do not be those people. Meet Jesus, be Jesus in the community, be the light. But anyways, so if you're reading through comments and you're finding your blood pressure just increase, get out of there.
Yeah.
Don't read them. Don't engage.
Yeah.
Don't engage.
Yeah, it's a guardrail you can put up. Absolutely.
Yeah. Ryan, do you want to talk about a few other examples that we do at our house with eyes, how we guard our eyes?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly the media, the visuals that you have in, whether that's, as Michelle, you mentioned, sites, I think movies, those type of things, really watching your content, and that's something that we've really adopted in our house of like, okay, it has this content in it. I don't really need to introduce that. We've shared different examples of this on like movies that we watched, and it was just like, oh, I feel like gross after watching it.
Yeah, there are some that we've just stopped. Others that we're like, maybe it's going to get better. It's, we're invested, and then we finish and we're just like, oh my gosh, my brain feels like garbage, and it's like but you have control over that. And we try to be aware. Yeah. One thing that I appreciate that you do, and this is modeled by our pastor here at Celebrate, Pastor Keith Loy. He'd shared this years ago about what he does if he's ever at a football game and the cheerleaders come, prancing out, he'll just turn and look at his wife. And we thought that was a really cool and honoring thing to do. So we do that. Yeah. Whether it's on a movie or, I'll be driving and sorry for the fellow drivers, I'll just look away. Like if I see a guy running with his shirt off, I'll just kind of look away in a safe manner.
Safely, yeah.
But I'll just divert my eyes. Right. I don't need to look at them and see what they're doing. I can kind of see the blur as they're running towards me that, it's a person. I don't need to look at it. I know we always joke, the first nice day of the summer, it's like, what do you say? Like, sun's out, guns out, or, people, you see all the girls running in their sports bras and guys with their shirts off, but there's a lot of it in the summer. So just be honoring to your spouse. And, what is that doing as you take that visual into your eyes, your head, your heart? What is that doing? So just things to be aware of, you guys. This is what we do. Take them or leave them. But also I feel like we have a very honoring relationship. Yeah. And we've lived out, we are products of the guardrails we've put up. So when people say you guys have a great relationship, well, great relationships take work.
Yeah.
So if you're listening and you're thinking, wow, that's a lot of extra. Well, do you want an extra marriage? Do you want your marriage to have fruits? Then you need to plant the right seeds and you need to water them accordingly, and you need to really cherish and nourish that relationship.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
All right. Absolutely. I felt like I was on a little soapbox there.
No, that's great.
So we've talked about feet. Where are you going? What actions are you living out? Where are you allowing yourself to go? We talked about, the being aware of these meetings with people of the opposite sex or traveling and just being aware, conferences, all of that stuff, being aware of that. Next, we talked about your eyes. So your eyes are the lamp of your body. What visuals are you taking in? What are you processing? Third, I want to talk about ears. So what conversations are you a part of? Ryan, I think we have both had these experiences where you're in a conversation or you're at lunch or you're with friends, whatever, and people start to go down this trail where maybe it's complaining about, their husband or their ex-husband or, whatever it is. And I think that it's being really uber sensitive and aware of if you're allowing yourself to be a part of that. So I try really hard not to be in those situations. And recently I was in one, and actually it was interesting because a friend stopped over and they said hello. And then later on they were like, gosh, I just felt like there was a weird presence around that conversation. And it was interesting that she felt it. There was a lot of negativity in the conversation, but it was interesting too, because I think I just felt really uncomfortable in it because there's some kind of complaining and kind of bashing going on. And I think that there's a fine line, because I think every person needs an accountability person, a safe space to talk about struggles in a godly manner. But if you are putting yourself with, if you're going out for, after work appetizers with girlfriends or whoever, coworkers, and it turns into like these vent sessions, that's really toxic stuff. Those are toxic seeds that you're planting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think of a guardrail, and protecting you from that. And I think you're so right, Michelle, in just like the influence that has. We were talking about this the other day of like, there's just some people that, I don't know what it is, like just an influence or if it's just like their demeanor that almost brings you down a little bit.
Yeah.
And, a
negativity.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to have that guardrail up and to acknowledge that, because it does have an impact. It'll have an impact on your relationship. If you're constantly around somebody that's bashing their spouse, it will have an impact on you and your marriage. Guarantee it will.
Yeah. I think what this conversation I was a part of, as people were kind of all complaining, it was like, one, I was the only one not doing that. And I definitely looked very much like, kind of the odd one out. But I think if I were to continually put myself in that situation, it would be really tempting to want to join in or chime in or just start doing that, and they say you're the sum of the 5 people that you're around. So if you're around that all the time, if that's what your social gatherings and your friend hangout time looks like, I think it's time to consider a guardrail.
Yeah.
And maybe it's you just standing up, or maybe it's you deciding what relationships you want to be in.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's spot on, Michelle, of just evaluating, okay, like, hey, I can't be around this group like that much. If I'm around them constantly, man, yeah, it's going to have an impact, know? So it's just evaluating like your time around those people, not saying like you have to disown them and never see them again, but just understanding like going in, hey, I really have to, either steer this conversation differently or limit my time around them.
Yeah. And I think that can be a really hard choice to make. But I think I think that's good advice, Ryan, that maybe it's just limiting your time.
Yeah.
You don't have to say goodbye forever, but maybe it's limiting them.
Yeah.
So, those are hard choices to make, but also knowing that this is, how badly do you want your marriage to thrive? If this is dragging you down, then you've got to make some changes. You got to put those guardrails up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I think this is kind of unrelated, but this is kind of a parenting story. And you probably have seen this with your kids too. Who they're around dictates, kind of persuades who they are. I think back to when Thomas was in preschool, he started getting into a lot of trouble. They were always like, him and this other friend were always laughing all the time and causing a really big disruption in the classroom. And come kindergarten time, we got the class list, saw he was partnered up in the same class as his friend. And we had made the call to his school and just said, hey, here's what's been happening in his preschool. Just so you know, these two together, they're just like, they are fuel for each other. The principal was like, you know what? If we know this in advance, let's just change it. Let's not even go down that road. And I tell you what, Thomas is like the best student. He had such a great year.
Yeah.
And part of it was like, it was hard to make that change because they were friends, but also seeing the road that they were going down together,
Right.
I think for both of them, and they have other friends, they, both go to that school, but, and maybe that sounds extreme, but I feel like that decision really changed the course of how he entered school and showed up as a student.
Absolutely.
That was a tough decision.
Yeah.
But he's great. He's a great student. He has all these positive notes. And I just think back to that. So maybe for you, maybe there are some relationships that you just have to evaluate and see, I don't love how this is making me think. I don't love the influence that they're having on me, the conversations we're having. And it's time. It's time to put up this guardrail.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to say this, Michelle, but if you want to have a different marriage, you have to make some different choices. And none of this is easy. We're not saying like that this is easy. We made a lot of decisions early on in our relationship that were not easy.
Yeah.
But we had that understanding of wanting something different. We had done things a certain way. We wanted something different.
Yeah.
So you have to make those tough decisions to do something different.
I love it. That's a great Ryan quote.
Yeah, there you go.
I love it. Say it again one more time.
Yeah, I mean, if you want a different marriage, you have to make some different decisions. Otherwise, just as Michelle said, like if you want to keep going, then keep doing the same decisions that you're making right now, and you'll have the same marriage you have right now.
But I don't think that's what our listeners want because they're listening.
That's exactly right.
So for you, if you want a different marriage, you have to make some different decisions.
Yeah.
And you've got this.
You've got it.
Yeah. Let's read Ephesians 6:10 through 18, the armor of God. And I think, Ryan, we actually might skip our mystery question for today. You guys, we are volunteers for the Celebrate MarriageCast. I don't know if you knew that. We do this as our volunteer ministry. We're not paid employees of the Celebrate MarriageCast at all. And we have jobs. And at the moment, we are recording this over lunch hour, and we had a little bit of tech issues. So in order for both of us to keep our employment, we are going to skip the mystery question until next week. Okay?
Right.
Sound great? You guys are on board with that? So this is Ephesians 6:10, the armor of God. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. We're actually going to, so that's verse 10 from Ephesians 6. Ryan, I think also what we're going to do is dive into the armor of God in our 5-Minute Friday, a future one.
Okay.
I think we should just unpack that a
Okay.
little more. So putting on the armor of God, I want to help walk you guys through what that looks like. How do you put on those different pieces of God's armor? So anything else to add?
Yep.
We're going to get back to work. You guys, thank you so much for joining us today on the Celebrate MarriageCast. If you need additional help, you can find us at celebrate.church/marriage. And we would love to have your feedback. You can text into our text line, which is 605-951-0110. And we will put links in our show notes to that number and resources as well. We hope you have a great week.
Have a great week.